Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you might be in the world. I nearly didn't start then because I forgot what I was doing. Anyway, we are joined. We are absolutely out of Gene Robinson. Gene Robinson appears out of the ether. Gene, g'day. Are you there, mate? G'day, Gene. And first of all, congratulations on your nomination for a very richly deserved award. And I hope it comes your way. What can I say? I can say you deserve to win it, and that's that. You've been nominated for the Humanitarian Award at the AUVSI gig coming up in a couple of weeks' time, I think. Just shaking. Have you got any audio today there, Gene?
No.
Oh, yeah, you do. Thank goodness you have audio. Thank goodness. Not last week. Not last week again. Cool. And so there's Gene. We've got Louis, of course, in Portugal, distracting me with helicopters. And for the first time, Nathan X has an amazing. He's actually done something which doesn't happen in our world, which is review aircraft and give it proper numbers. And then we've got another king of reviews, and we're seeing his face for perhaps the first time. Have we seen your face before, Nicola? Or ArxangelRC? Yeah, you should have seen it, of course. We need to watch more videos then. And you fantastic. Everybody I know that's serious watches your reviews. They really do, Nicola. We love them. We love them, so thank them very much. So let's start with Nathan. Nathan, why? Why did you do it? Why did you line up all these platforms?
I started last year, last spring, and my background is farming, and I wanted to learn how to scan fields. And I realized that the commercial technology out there is very, very expensive, especially for fixed wing platforms that are able to scan the quantities of areas that I wanted to scan. So I decided I can't afford that. So let's go down the route of building myself. So I was doing a lot of research, a lot of reading online, a lot of listening to Arxangel's reviews back in the infancy of the mapping plane stages, before the Believer was ever released. And I got started, and I did I built myself an Eve 2000, and I flew it for 2 hours, and I was happy. So once I realized that could be done for $600 US total cost, I was just like, this is incredible. Let's really dive in here and see if there's some more potential. And that's when I got the idea of, can I do this commercially? How can I do this the best? And to start, I needed to do some more research, and the research on the numbers of which airframe to choose just weren't out there. It was all, maybe a review here or there, but no hard numbers. You just have to ask users and different users what their amp draws were at different voltages. And it was just a big guessing game. And so I decided that I was going to have to do the research myself and try to do it as scientifically as possible and figure out which one really is the best.
Well, fair play to you. I'm very impressed. I'm very pleased that you came to the. I love the Believer. I think Nicola, I think you also have enjoyed that platform. I think it is the first one I've come across that's built for purpose. Gene, have you got your hands on one of these yet, or seen one yet?
I have not. I'm listening very intently about the Believer. I think I'm going to switch over to another window and take a look. Yeah,
it's. I think it just looked right to me. I don't think any pictures or anything or video of you that you see of it does it justice really. But Nathan, what numbers, what flight endurance did you get out of it yet so far? And did you have an actual nominal payload in there at the same time?
Yeah, so very good question. I wanted to do it as realistic as possible, so I added 550 grams of poker chips, just a dead payload, non-magnetic or anything, and call it gambling if you may. But I did that with some lithium-ion batteries, and I flew for 4 hours and 42 minutes from takeoff to landing.
Wow.
And a note on that is that it was literally freezing here. It was 0 degrees C, 32 degrees Fahrenheit, almost for that entire flight. And if you know anything about lithium-ion batteries, when they're cold, they don't have nearly the capacity. You can see that in data sheets. You can see that, experimentally tested. And I have reason to believe that I think I can get to nearly 6 hours, if not more, with payload. So this isn't just packing it crammed full of batteries. This is real life.
Help me out, Gary. Help me out understanding something, and perhaps Nicola can also help me out here. So back when I flew planes, our longest endurance planes were the gliders, like the multiplex, Aeron, Soleus, and all those. Couldn't these, because they have a very limited room to put payloads, but can easily get a camera, a small camera on one of those, wouldn't they be more efficient than these kinds of planes?
I think I'll jump in on that, and I'll let the other guys jump in. But I think what you're missing there is you want a decent mapping camera, and you want to get your fat fingers into where that mapping camera is, and you want to be able to put it in your car. Yes, you can shoehorn stuff into inappropriate airframes, but it just but it's almost like a work from.
Because I used to fly, for instance, the small glider of multiplex for a couple of hours on a single 2200 milliamp battery, and just a genuine question, because those big long endurance planes, what I've seen so far, the people that were doing RC flying, not real world work with them, was they were using big gliders, and those can take some limited amount of room, so you can put a small camera on one of those. I'm sure a 500-gram camera can be put on one of those.
Okay, so maybe I'll take a different approach to this, but my understanding is that high aspect ratio wings are generally very good for low airspeed and very efficient flight. That works if your goal is just endurance and just flight time. But when it comes to actually mapping, you got to balance that with a little bit of forward speed, because the faster you can get a job done, the better, or the more value that plane has. In addition, shorter wings also aren't affected quite as much by turbulence. So they have a little bit higher wing loading, and thus they need to travel a little bit faster as well, but they don't get bounced around quite as much as the gliders would in very windy and turbulent days. So although a glider might work on a very smooth day and for going very high and just loitering around and going very slow, I think that these planes are a little more purpose-built to going faster. And that's what separates them into more of a purpose-built plane, like Gary said, and they perform better.
But then you'll have problems with the cameras, like global shutter cameras versus rolling and the rolling shutter cameras on traditional cameras. So it's a matter of compromise, because if you go slow, you can use a cheaper camera, rolling, and avoid the rolling shutter effects, right, Gene?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. One of the things that early on we discovered about pixel smear and turbulence, and every time the aircraft moves, if you're at 400 feet, just a nominal movement at the aircraft level is a very wide movement at 400 feet away.
Yeah.
And we started that studying the pixel smear and everything else, and you have to increase the shutter speed the faster you go, and it is very much a trade-off.
Mm.
Yeah. So the tipping point is somewhere along the middle, perhaps, no? A larger of those, like the Skywalkers, that were the darling of
I never liked them. I never liked them. I never liked the Skywalkers. I never liked either the Skywalker flying wings or the Skywalker high wing thing. The flying wings were subpar flying wings. They still are subpar flying wings. They really are. If you've flown decently made ones like Gene's, And like my mate Rods from flyingwings.co.uk, you'll put in an advert every time. You'll see that. I didn't mean to, but I did. And but they're just much better. And if you once you've flown a well set up wing, you'll realise the difference. What was I going to say? This. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to bring up a point about the shutter speed and the shutter smear, and that's a very, very valid point. And especially even with mechanical shutter cameras that aren't a true like a leaf shutter, they even have somewhat of a smear that the entire shutter crossing the focal plane is actually, it takes some time. It's a lot slower than the actual speed of the shutter per se. So it's not a single point where you're taking the image. It's still a little bit of a blur where you're taking the image. You'll still get that. Exactly. It's a true mechanical rolling shutter. It's much better than like a shutterless camera like a GoPro, but you still have that effect. Now, you can't necessarily get away with that unless you move to a different type of shutter like a leaf shutter. But as far as the pixel smear, what I'd really like to see, and with the current gimbals out there, I think it can be done, and I've done some of the math on it, is that if you roll your camera as you take the photo, you're no longer blurring the ground. And I'd like to see that developed. And, I don't have the programming knowledge to be able to do that. But, Gene, you're shaking your head there. Maybe you've thought about that. Or maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Well, every pilot, autopilot has some sort of gimbal stabilization system in it. And really, it's just the delta of the X, Y, and Z axes is what you're looking for. It's a math problem. And you're absolutely right. It can be done. But any error that you have in there is going to be magnified so many times. And, if you have any sort of delay in coding, if it hangs up for just a little bit, I'm not saying that it couldn't be done. We looked at it and we saw mathematically that it could be done, but we haven't seen it in practical application yet. But dang good idea. Dang good idea.
Well, look out.
Look out. We better stop talking about him now. Everybody stop talking about him now. The man's about to arrive. He'll probably have a hat on. Don't talk about him now.
Oh, my God.
What have you beaten a zebra or something? What have you done?
He's in jail. He's in jail.
It's winter here. There's a storm. I'm outside in a big marquee. Hello. I'm going off on and just waiting for summer.
The circus has arrived. You've joined the circus.
No. He criticized the mayor, and now he's in jail. Is that jail in Tokoroa, Bruce?
Actually, I'm not in the council chambers at the moment because you can't hear the dueling banjos, can you?
No.
So I'm not there. That's it. Yep.
We were just talking about cameras, rolling shutters, and all that sort of thing, and we've kind of we've disregarded the rest of your great studies, Nathan, and just gone straight to the believer because I like it as well, which was very wrong. That was very wrong on my part.
So first, you made a point about the Skywalker, and anecdotal evidence. Here is the front of my my Titan, which is completely blown apart,
okay.
And there's multiple factors. Go ahead.
Can I ask something? You assembled that; it didn't come assembled.
Correct.
And you used the glue provided with the kit.
No.
Right.
That's my mistake. I'll give it to you there. There's contributing factors, but nonetheless, I've learned a valuable lesson.
You're a better builder than that. Don't take it, Nathan.
That's how I learned my lesson, and now I don't use that glue anymore, obviously. But
what brand it is actually, so we can stay away from it.
I used the BSI foam glue, which I thought would be just amazing, and it just chipped off, and I was so disappointed. I won't lie. It just doesn't work on EPO foam.
Right. Actually, when I got my first, I think it was the Clouds was my first proper sort of half mapping plane that I had to put together myself because it came completely unassembled. And I think I spent half a day staring at the parts and evaluating my options. Up until then, I had only used some type of wood glue, which took about 48 hours to set. and that really wasn't an option. And I had used epoxy, which I thought would get brittle from the sun, and this would be a heavy plane. I mean, 3 kilograms plus or minus a few hundred grams is not what I would call easy at that point. And my only base for comparison was the Ranger X, which has a plastic fuselage, so that really didn't, no glue, no nothing. That thing was indestructible. And then I came across something that's sold everywhere here. It's called Moment Classic or something like that. And it probably would melt your typical Depron foam or XPS. I'm not sure about that. And it does soften the EPO. It makes it like goo. What is that?
That's something that all Americans talk about, but I don't know if Bruce can get it in New Zealand, or even if Louis can get it in Portugal, but you can't get it here. It's just so.
No, I haven't seen that.
No,
No, but the one I got, it actually softens the EPO. So you have to be very careful when you put two halves together. If you squeeze them too much, they wrinkle, and when it dries up, they become solid again. But you keep the wrinkles.
And
But
that's the
that
same thing
thing-
that Goop does.
Yeah.
Yes, it's the same stuff, just different parts of the world.
That thing is indestructible.
And that's what Bruce does as well. He stays wrinkled. No, anyway. No, I was going to chip in and say about these platforms. So, Nathan, you get your 4 or 5 hours endurance out of it, but you're going to run into the next problem, which is how do you keep your camera alive for that long? And if you fly for that long and you didn't get the mission done, how do you know? You know, if it's not working. I don't know, Gene, where your timing or how long you like to fly before you really want to come home and see. What's your how long do you? I think much over an hour might be asking a bit much.
It's a relative thing. You know, if it's a really dangerous flight and you know that you're pushing the limits of your aircraft and your skills, then any flight after about 10 minutes makes you sweat. You know, and after you've been up there once or twice like that, it's just pure torture. So you want to get up there and get down very quickly. But I mean, from a practical standpoint, an hour's worth of shooting is a lot of pictures, and you don't get them. Oh man, it's rough. So I would say, you know, it's what your pain threshold is, and what your flight window is. Quite honestly, if you get down to it, I mean, if you have 1 hour before sunset to get the pictures done, if you don't get them in the first hour, you're waiting until the next day, no matter what, right?
So
Yeah.
absolutely, and I think that's, you know, kind of a misnomer here, is that it's only about the long flight time, and that's mainly what I'm going for. And really, it's a balance. You got one of three things. You either get a lot of flight time, which, as you said, is not always so valuable. You get heavy payload, which isn't always needed, but you can carry some big and some very nice cameras. Or you can have not either of those two. You can have a light payload and you can just go faster. So if you don't need the image quality and you can deal with the blur, or you've got lower resolution like NDVI cameras, they sample it, you know, the resolution isn't quite there. So if you go faster, you can get more done. So that's why this test really dealt with a lot of different speeds. Not just at the most efficient slow speed, you know, really close to stall. I mean, I tested these all the way up to, you know, 100 kilometers an hour, if not more. You know, these planes were going really, really fast, and you know, they won't last that long. The batteries won't last that long when you're going that fast, but you can get the job done, and you can really start to map in some high wind scenarios. So
I think you can get the mileage. Doesn't matter if the time comes down, you're going to cover more distance in that time. I've been doing the past 2 weeks specifically, I've been doing tests on the nanotalon with the strakes, that new craze that's taken over the nanotalon you know, fans, the strakes that they put on the hatch at the front. I don't have it with me here right now to show you, but most of you have probably seen that. So the idea is that they prevent some turbulences from going on top of the wing and causing the roll issues that everybody seems to be complaining about. And what I found out was, because I have my OSD set up to also show me milliamp hours per kilometer, and usually I would only go for the longest flight possible regardless of the speed. But during my tests, I noticed something else. In certain situations, when the plane is set up properly with board alignment, CG, etc., you actually get increased speed at the same amp draw, and milliamperes per kilometer decreases without having to sacrifice anything else, including payload.
Right, right. And I think if you've looked at if you looked at some of the charts that I published on the thread and RC groups, I both publish the power draw curve, and then I publish an energy per meter or an energy per distance curve, which basically takes into account that now, because you're going faster, you can afford more power, but it's still the same energy per distance, just like you're talking about, the same milliamp hours per kilometer. The one thing that I did with some of my studies was I tried to do everything based on watt hours rather than milliamp hours, and I just took it as an energy, and it's just kind of a, an engineering background sort of a study, just a little bit different. But when it comes to the practical applications of users that fly FPV, it really does come down to milliamp hours, and that definitely has value too.
That's the trouble. It's just so many clever people. Nathan, what is your background? Where did you get all this from? Where did you get all this smarts from?
I'm a recent graduate from a 4-year university. I have my bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering.
Right.
Oh, he's got that really advanced reading, writing, and arithmetic in him. That's what it is.
Yeah. Anyway, I try to break that down into something that's a little more simple. I try to make it useful, but at the same time, very practical for those who are studying this from an engineering perspective and from a business perspective. So I hope that, there's value to those and that people can see the value to that.
So where, you say from a business perspective, where's this likely to take you then, do you think now?
I really don't know, but I'll tell you what, this has gotten me more contacts in the industry. And, just being here today and actually meeting some of you, face to face per se, it's broadened my perspective. And, I don't know where it's going to go. I'd like to offer lower cost aircraft to the market. And I think that's the sign of a maturing industry, is when you start to see more competition at lower prices. So I hope that this pushes other manufacturers to really focus on maybe some longer flight times or some better performance or lower prices,
So what's your target, Nathan?
I don't know. I thought, maybe somewhere in the $3,000 to $5,000 range. I'm not exactly certain, but it
wasn't that the price, Gary? You remember that? Wasn't that the price that 3DR used to sell those mapping planes?
Yeah, I've got one of those. I think it was. Was it 3,000? Isn't it 2,999 or something?
Oh, sorry, the difference.
Yeah, it's $1. It's $1.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think.
Okay, but I think those were pretty basic. That was an APM in a Skywalker with very limited space in it, very limited flight times.
Yes.
Although some people still do swear by those Skywalkers. You did mention you don't like them. I've never had one of them because that was too slow for me. That was like, no matter what you do, that would not go above 40 kilometers an hour unless you want to break a wing. And that has actually happened, and I've seen it firsthand. But yeah, those were some weird times, and not sure how that paid out, but I know they did sell a lot of those.
Yeah, that's my understanding. And like you say, lots of people swear by those, and I'm sure the Skywalker company sold a lot of those planes because people could buy them anywhere and put a flight control or a Pixel or whatever and fly them. Yeah.
The thing about them though was they were slow and they were very stable, and they refused to stall. That was why people liked them. They did not stall. No matter what you did to that plane, it would not go down, it would not spiral. So it was perfect to get into FPV, but at some point they were too slow, and people needed speed, because probably most of you know, or whoever's seen my videos knows that I like to chase clouds. A lot of people criticize me for this. Oh, you're going high, you're endangering people. No, I'm not. Check out the airplane map over Bulgaria and you'll know what I'm talking about. There's no one up there except for me up to 10,000 kilometers. So, yeah. And then at 30 kilometers an hour, you're not getting anywhere. When I fly my clouds, I'm pushing it, really pushing it, and it's not drawing a whole lot of amps, and I get to gain altitude at probably 200-300 meters a minute at 70 or 80% throttle at 60 to 70 kilometers an hour. And when I'm chasing something that's 10-15 kilometers away from me, a group of clouds or something, it's important for me to get there before the battery runs out or my beard grows long enough to cover the video screen or something. Yeah. He knows what I'm talking about. Gary knows what I'm talking
young
about.
People, bloody young people, youth.
Come on, Gary. Come on, Gary. You used to do fly balloons, so you're not good example.
Yeah, I am the cloud. Bruce, you did reviews of all the early Skywalkers, didn't you? You did the whole series for those.
Yeah, I wasn't impressed actually. Structurally, they were very weak and flimsy. They had tried to go fast, then often the tails would fall off as well as the wings. But they were all that was available at the time, so people used them. But now there's so many better choices. They're sort of, a little piece of history.
Absolutely, yes. They've got us to where they are. I'm just intrigued as to their choices in their mapping platforms. I've flown one of them. I can't. It's the flatter one. The Eve, that's it. Yeah, that one. And it was flexing about, and I wasn't so happy with that one.
And
I think
there was one that was famous for tip stalling. When you were doing a bend, no, it wouldn't stall straight, but if you would get at a certain angle when banking, it would stall on the wing.
Again, I don't work for the believer people. It sounds like I do, but one of the great things I think about it is the way it comes apart when you want it to come apart, when you want to transport it somewhere. The tails come off, the wings come off, and it's just a neat little package. And that's certainly, there you go. And having the control, having the servos inboard, and then the fins just clip into it and then clip into the servos. If you're just day in, day out working, I can imagine myself having to work with the thing.
That is priceless.
You reckon?
I wouldn't. I always thought about it, and I was like, do I need that? It's not a substitute for performance in my perspective, but it definitely really is an added benefit. There's only one small thing that I have to say about that. There's the carbon fiber tube that goes across. It's not constrained from moving into one wing more than the other, so you can, it's not always centered, which makes it a little difficult. I wish they would improve that. But other than that, I really cannot complain about that. Yeah.
Well, most of the damage, in fact, all of the damage I've done to my Skywalker is putting it in and out of the car. That's all of the damage I've done to it.
Okay, now this is just another point. I received one yesterday, and it comes in this foam case now. That I don't remember that in my first one, but it's this foam case that you can put the wings in with the motors, and you can put everything back into the original box, fully assembled, and it's basically its own transport case without having to buy another $400 or $500 transport case or throw it in the back of your vehicle. It goes right back into the box. It's really incredible. I won't lie.
Yeah, well, I think that's a very important often forgotten part of the whole thing is you got to move them around, and if you're working, they're going to suffer.
I'd say it was about time that started happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, in the comments, above and beyond saying that, how do you prevent overheating of systems? That's to include the stuff on the ground, your ground control station, the iPad, and all that sort of thing. That's a good question, and that the industry needs competition. And hi to Jake Built. So, can anyone want to answer that? Overheating gear on the ground. Anyone
Yeah, I have one
move to
suggestion.
Australia. We'll move to New Zealand in the winter. It's freezing here today. Yeah, no problem with overheating. No problem.
It's cold here, mate, as well. Look.
I have one suggestion. Try not using an iPad. That would solve the overheating issue with the tablet.
That is so aggravating, just for it to just pop up and right in the middle of a flight and say, "I'm too hot. Sorry, see you."
Maybe carry an ice pack with you.
But that's interesting. So
guys, you have to stop mining bitcoins while you're flying. That's what makes it hot.
Yes, but of course, I would never fly now without having some form of artificial intelligence and/or crypto something or other. Blockchain. Sorry, I got it wrong. Some sort of blockchain thing going on in the background. I mean, obviously, that's how you must fly: blockchain and AI. Yeah. It's just so the iPad, when it shuts down, it just says, "I'm shutting down. I'm too hot." Is that how it ends its day?
That's how it stops. It just quits.
Hey, Gene, just get a bigger one, because the bigger one has more surface to cool down. Get the iPad Pro.
Actually, that is true. But I have also seen there's actually a snap-on sort of affair that has a fan on the back of it that it has a battery and the whole 9 yards that you can snap onto the back of your iPad, and it does cool it because that whole bottom is aluminum. So I mean, there's some stuff out there that people are doing. It's been addressed, but it is annoying to have to put up with.
Give me your address, Dean. I'll send you one of these. It was a cooling.
Right there. That's it. That's what I'm talking about.
It does raise an interesting sort of thought, really, though, because these long-range mapping platforms are going to come into their own as around the world VLOS regulations are relaxed for commercial operation. Yes. So then that does actually then say, well, is an iPad good enough for your ground control station then? And it sounds like this is one strike against an iPad. It could happen with my Android tablet because the battery will run flat. So that's a similar sort of thing. So if we're moving into the realms of BVLOS, what are the standards going to look like for the ground control station? It ain't going to be a tablet anymore, then, it would seem. I don't know, Gene, you run with that first.
Come on. Sorry, just before Gene goes on, just get an Honda generator. Just get an Honda generator. All your troubles will be away.
But will that be a certified Honda generator?
I'm sure it is. You can buy it on any good hardware store, so it stays on the ground.
You are correct, sir. I have used that Honda generator that you speak of, and it is a very, very efficient, especially the EUs and the newer generators. But going back to what I was going to start with, we started out with laptops. We started out with proper computers that were had flight control systems on them, and of course they ran Windows, and Windows crashed. Okay, I get that, but they would run all day long. Okay, and I know you guys have probably seen my little van, my mobile command unit that I put together. It has its own little climate control system, air conditioning. It has a generator and that sort of thing. So we've been doing the sort of missions that Gary is talking about right now, the long duration, long endurance type of missions for years, several years now. And quite frankly, that's where we're going to have to go. There are going to have to be systems that are put together that can last all day, that can stand the heat or stand the cold if you're Bruce, and operate in a lot of different environments, because this is the technology that is mobile. I mean, it needs to be out there. It needs to move, and the industry is going to have to step up and give us the tools that'll do that, especially when we start flying beyond visual line of sight. End of rant.
Yeah, no, the game's about to change again, isn't it? It's about to change, except if you're Bruce, because the mayor says the game. If you're Bruce, you have to go and join. You have to go and join the circus because you can't fly anymore. So it's a shame, but he's got there in the end. We'll talk about that in a minute, shall we, Bruce? So what else do I need to ask about these tests? You can see them. I should have put a link in the bottom already, which I done ahead because I'm very bad at doing that. But it's happened on RC model reviews. It's happened on RC groups mainly, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's the most, I think, the most popular thread in the commercial sector, the commercial FPV aircraft, and it's also got a thread basically mirroring posts in discuss.rdupilot.org. And there's been a number of posts on Facebook and in different areas where I've tried to, bring people to the results and kind of share the data as much and as best I can. So there's numerous places you can get it.
Fair play to you. And have any of the manufacturers reached out to you?
Not yet. I'm kind of interested what they think of me. I don't know.
Oh, that usually takes time. Don't worry.
Do you think it'll happen?
I think so, yeah.
Because obviously China is...
As long as the first letter he gets is not from a lawyer, he'll be okay.
No reason to expect one from a lawyer. So.
And the other thing I wanted to ask was, do you have a particular one that's particularly good at a particular job and another one's good at another job? Could you define them as that one's good for this purpose, that's for this, and that's for that?
Absolutely. I would say number one is that if you're doing mapping, I haven't really seen anything better than the Believer. I will agree with that if you're doing some really long endurance mapping. If you're doing some shorter endurance mapping and you want something that's a bit lighter, the Clouds really is a scaled down Believer, and it performs very, very well at high speeds. It has pretty much a dedicated camera bay in the middle of it. The front's designed very well for a battery and the rear for an autopilot. It doesn't have a whole lot of room for a parachute, but there is that bay there as well. If you want to do something like package dropping, or you need the volume in the middle of the fuselage, I really can't beat the Titan. The Titan really is the largest one, and its efficiency, it does take a little bit of a hit, but it's still in the same class. It's not 100% worse or half as efficient by any means. It has a removable payload bay underneath, which is really, really handy, especially if you wanted to swap out cameras or swap out maybe packages if you want to do package drops or something like that. So the Titan definitely has its purpose. The Eve is really, unfortunately, my worst performer, and I want to go back and double check, but it wasn't as good, and it was my first plane, so I have a special place in my heart for it, but I just can't justify moving forward with it. And then the MTD is just kind of the FPV plane. It's very narrow, it's sleek, it doesn't have a whole lot of room on the middle, but it's something that's probably one of the rougher and tougher ones, and good to get you up and going, and it's a lot less expensive than some of the other ones, and it's just a tried and true tested favorite, and there's a lot of information out there on it if you read online. So they each have their different purpose, but I definitely do like the Believer when we're talking about mapping.
Do you think sorry, go ahead.
Are you planning to redo your tests with real camera instead of the pocket chips?
Absolutely, but not with every aircraft, because it already took a good enough time to do it with every aircraft. And the poker chips was actually only for the endurance flight. For the other flights, I actually had 2 steel weights that weighed 1,050 grams each. So it was a total of 2,100 grams worth of weights, plus a 16 amp hour LiPo battery, which totaled of 4,100 grams. And that was the weight I tested on each of the aircraft. Of course, if you lighten that weight, the efficiencies will get a little bit better, but I was really trying to load them down and max them out. And they definitely were at their maximum for hand launch capability.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, that's your next point, isn't it? At what point does hand launching cease being fun, even with the, people will say, yeah, but the autopilot will take it over and do it, but you still stumble, you still, it gets pretty dreadful.
So in none of my tests did I ever have to run to hand launch any of the planes. The only times when it was difficult was when there was no wind, no headwind, because you had to give it just a little bit more energy to be able to not swoop down and hit the ground at its maximum weight. But if you're ever in high density altitudes or in very warm conditions, I just recommend, why do you really need that 6 hours? Just come back after 4 hours and take one battery out of it and launch again. It's okay. It's a trade-off that you'll have to take. And usually people aren't looking for that, massive range. But on the same token, these planes can do it. So it's always good to kind of over test or test in the worst conditions and then, load them lighter and let them go.
Yeah, I've said it here many times. I live at 5,000 feet and it's generally plus 30 and it makes a heck of a difference. So I watch a lot of these flight tests and, it's all down at super sea level air. You're quite hot where you are, Gene, aren't you? Of course you're quite hot, Gene, but that aside, how high are you there?
Well, we're at 1,000 feet, and we're just going into our summertime, and it's not unusual to be 95, 100 degrees Fahrenheit and 80 to 90% humidity, which is just absolutely miserable during those days when you have to go out and do it. But our density altitudes can get I remember we were flying the Superbats, the big aircraft. We had our density altitudes here. We're at 7,000 and 8,000 feet.
Mm.
Yeah,
it's rough.
So yeah, I'm a pilot as well, and a lot of times on the METAR readings, they read the density altitude on the frequencies. So I'm very familiar in Iowa. Here we're at 1,000 feet above sea level, and density altitudes in the summertime, yeah, they get in that 6,000-7,000 range, sometimes higher, not too often, much higher, but that's definitely going to be something that I'd like to test. I'm kind of moving slow forward with this. I don't want to get ahead of myself. I don't want to get anybody expecting a whole lot and then disappoint. So I definitely have more testing to do. I don't want to say that I'm finished or that I know it all. So
I think 4.5 hours is quite a lot already.
Yeah.
Don't think you can. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's got to be a number where you can feed your camera that long, and there's got to be other variables other than pure time and weight, as you very, very correctly said. You've hit the nail on the head with it there. I think
it depends on the number of the pictures that you will have to take, because even on a 20-minute flight with one of our drones doing the survey of a wind turbine blade, we generate around 200 gigabytes of data. So it really depends on what you're going to do.
I think I'd like to see.
The one thing that I could say at that 4 hour, even the 6 hour, we go fight these wildland urban fires, that are out here in Texas. They spread, they go quickly, and they can be an all-day affair. And if you don't have the luxury of a manned high bird up there telling you what the fire is doing, the next best thing would be this bird. Put it up 4.5 hours, 5 hours at a time with a camera that you feed right back down to incident command so that they can see what's going on. Priceless.
Yeah, and usually it gets, when you start talking about that endurance, it's typically reserved for gas engine planes, and those planes I don't think are very often hand launched, just because of the complexity of the systems, maybe the dangers, and usually ultimately the weights. They're just larger aircraft, and they're also more expensive. So this is kind of where I'm trying to fill the gap in the market of something that can be portable, but yet still have an incredible endurance. And usually the conversation eventually evolves, when it's talking about mapping, it evolves into something about VTOL, and that's kind of the next step I see in the development process. And I see a lot of merit in the dual motor, or the dual motor tail sitter, or the belly sitter, I guess, as you might call it, and not having to deal with the extra drag and the weight of the typical quadcopter style frame. Just
But why?
integrated.
But why? Surely, if you've got, just say, 3 hours endurance, you can find somewhere in that 3 hours endurance that you can actually take your fixed wing aircraft off from. I don't understand. I'm a bit. I'm in this regard. I'm not a believer. I'm not a believer in this current fad, because you just walk in. I mean, Gene, you'll remember old autopilot days. People are just beginning to talk about, wouldn't it be nice if you could have repeatable missions, so it always flew the same mission? And that's 10 years ago. That's exactly what we used to do. I used to then walk 500 meters, throw the wing again, and it would map exactly the same area. Then I swap battery, walk 500 meters, chuck the wing, and you just walk the overlap. You're walking into what you're doing, but making things very complicated. Very complicated.
I agree with you, but I also have to disagree, and I have to respond at least a little bit. You're right when you talk about takeoff. Takeoff, you can throw the plane, and it's not that difficult. They can climb very, very steep. You can put an incredibly power system and practically climb vertical using a normal fixed wing. But when it comes to landing, you're right that the endurance allows you to choose a landing spot that's suitable. However, currently there's a lot of people looking to get into mapping that don't have fixed wing flying experience like we do. And that being said, it's a lot easier to control and to fly a multicopter, because when you let go of the sticks, it stabilizes and it doesn't move. And I think that's kind of important for some users, is to have a user-friendly landing experience.
Yeah, but what I'll do is I'll come in with my fixed wing fly. So I'll let you rant in a minute. I'll come in with my fixed wing flying experience, and I'll undercut its price by half because I haven't got that complex machine. That's what I'll do.
Yep.
Sorry, Gene, you rant now, and then we better argue with Bruce. Gene, you rant, mate.
It's all a matter of training. If the right tool is a fixed wing, then the right tool is a fixed wing. Period. End of sentence. We've got Alti, and we've got the. We even have a one of the six. What is it called? It's a VTOL, but it's very complex.
The Firefly Y6.
Thank you. That's it. We have one of those, and it is a complex system, and you have to mess with the best of both. You still have to learn how to fly a quadcopter or a copter, and then you still have to learn about the fundamentals of flight and what makes it fly. So you're going to learn, if you're talking about that, you're going to learn both anyway. So why not reduce your complexity and your pilot workload and do a fixed wing and leave it up there for 4.5 hours flying your mission and be done with it, with enough standoff to go over and land at your bug out spot that's, a half a mile away. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, it's and then the sat behind Louis there is some old fashioned thing that's been around for years. And if you want to, good day there, Philip. It's a good job you've joined us now, because we'll argue with you and Bruce very shortly. We'll bat you off each other. But sat behind Louis there is something that will do VTOL all day long.
And fly fast.
Burst of time.
Sorry.
For very short periods of time, though.
No. You have professional helicopters that fly for a long time, not for hours, sure, but for a long time.
I know.
Well, good. I'm glad you know.
But still, not at the level that these planes would, not at these costs, and not so easly.
Depends, yeah, but now you're getting into the issues of sensors, and then you're getting into the issues of available fuel. And not when I say available fuel, I say, let's say you're moving over, you've got to take something somewhere, and you can't take huge lipos because you can't get it on the airliner easily. And then so petrol becomes your friend. And it's not only powering your Honda generator for your ground control station, but it's powering your helicopter as well. So there's lots of other considerations, because and the helicopter is going to be lifting a LiDAR, for instance, and that's the people are rushing to fly LiDARs under big helicopters. Oh, I've gone into full rant mode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One point I do want to make about VTOL, and actually one of the most important, I think, is actually payload protection on landing. Because a fixed wing, no matter what, you have energy when you're landing. You have speed. You can reduce that with flaps and other methods, or having a wing that breaks off, like the Swift planes. You can do a lot of different things, but at the end of the day, there's some energy that has to be absorbed during landing. And I think that that's what VTOL really does a good job of, is protecting your payload as you come down.
We have a term for those. We call them biological velocity arresters. Bushes, trees.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, stuff. Yeah. Anyway,
I wish foam dealt better with that. I wish foam was much more durable, but that gets into another class of aircraft and of systems that I guess I don't really think we're focusing on here tonight.
What about the old solutions like parachutes? And remember the big pole with the wire and it catches the wingtip? And I mean, we're looking, and we've got to think outside the box, don't we? Maybe we have to go back and reinvent the past with parachutes.
Yeah, and look at what we used to do a couple of years ago when we didn't have smart flight controllers and only flew RC planes with balsa and those crazy covers that would be damaged if you land on a higher grass tip. So we have to be look at the past to see if we can learn something.
And you can bring up a good point. Why reinvent the wheel? You're right, parachutes work very well. The reason that I don't particularly like them is because I like to fly in wind, and wind, definitely takes its toll on parachute landings. However, on the same token, if you can have a plane that flies very slow in the wind, you can land at a very, very slow ground speed, which is very important. So, you talk about hybrid systems, and, maybe a VTOL does work, but, it struggles in the wind as well. But if you can do a system that knows to trigger a parachute on landing because it's not very windy, or to do a fixed wing landing, and it can make that decision for you and do everything a lot more automated, then that really is a system that has some power.
Now you're talking about artificial intelligence and that sort of thing. And to me, you already have a solution to the problem. So come on, Nathan, let's see it.
I think what you're talking about is something that DJI will probably release within the next 5 to 10 years and just screw up the whole market for other stuff. They've already got the vertical part done. They just have to get that fixed wing thing sorted out.
Will they ever do that?
We've already heard rumors that they are working on a fixed wing, have we not?
Well,
I guess.
Yeah.
You know what? It's funny because exactly 3 years ago, might have been 4, I went to a couple of people around here and I told them, I want to build an agricultural copter. And they were people that had already gotten funding for building some kind of a copter and were dealing in that sector. So I thought, I want to build an agricultural copter for that and that purpose, spraying, mapping, whatever. And they sat there and they were like, I don't think that's going to take. I think there's no future for that. And 2 years later, DJI comes out with their agricultural copter. And, I really don't want to say on air the words I was thinking at that point, in regards to those people. But, they, with their big expertise, sort of went away somewhere. And I haven't seen or heard of them since, although they were very convinced that they were building a DJI competitor of sorts. Yeah.
But
we're joking now, but when you see the DJI fixed wing VTOL thingamajig, whatever contraption, I think
they'll struggle to exactly where to pitch it. I don't think they'll know where to come in and pitch it, and I think other companies will have gone past them. I don't think they're going to win this. Remember, they got in quick, leveraging open source software for their first multi-rotor, and They were just quick to market with 2 sticks and 4 motors. That's all they were in a nice case. They were the first people to make a product that your wife or girlfriend that might let you have in the house that didn't look like a bag of bones thing. That's probably more important than anything else. If you're allowed to have it in the house, it's probably worth
the WAF factor, wife acceptance factor, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
The Apple of quadcopters.
DJI has grown, and it's no longer a toy or a hobby or something. It's a business, and their main focus right now is commercial, not just consumer. Like the DJI, the Spark, the Mavic, the Phantom. Those are hobby grade machines. Some people try to use them for something serious, but I've got a Phantom. It's okay to chase my planes around. It's okay to take with me on a vacation. I certainly don't think buying a new Phantom is worth it, because they cost a ton of money and they're worth half of that in a year. And the technology for most people is not going to matter. For me, it matters a bit because they do improve the camera, and that's important. So probably going to upgrade to a second-hand one. But the commercial part, just look at what they've been doing. The S800, 900, 1000, then we have there was something bigger. And then you've got the octocopters, the agricultural copters, the Matrix series, all aimed at industry, not at consumers, not at you and me. Well, depends on what you're doing. I guess Gene probably aimed at Gene, but I don't have a use for a mattress.
I do.
A lot of industries do.
I think it's very interesting, though, that actually Parrot has done an interesting job in the prosumer market and now the consumer, or the professional, the industrial market, with they're merging with remind me, not Mica Sense, but SenseFly. With the EV, yes, correct. And they have automated fixed wing flying by a good amount, and I think that'll be interesting to see if DJI follows, I guess, their lead into that fixed wing market, because I do think that there could be some competition there, and that's kind of out of the market that I'm talking about. But
well, it'd be interesting, but let's back the conversation towards another part of the southern hemisphere. Let's bat it towards Philip and dear old Bruce. Well, Philip, you've had a win. Let's go for the positive. Well, yes, let's do that. Let's go for the positive story first. You've had a win, so Ballarat said it's okay.
Yeah, so we had a lovely 3-hour council meeting. Which was quite interesting. I've never actually sat through a full council meeting, and everything was there, from streets being renamed to why permits went through and various housing estates. And we managed to stay awake for long enough to get to the section that was on drones. And the debate didn't. Well, it wasn't really a debate. We had 6 people get up and speak. I spoke on CASA's ability to regulate the airspace in Australia, and various other people talked at it from different points of view. We had one commercial operator there who turned up and said there should be lots of rules, and it would be great to get rid of all of the sub-2 kilo people and have no phantoms in the sky. And then they managed to, not really cover their own argument very well, so that was good. And after we finished speaking, one of the councillors got up and moved a motion to remove the word drone from all local laws and basically allow CASA to do their job and run the airspace. They acknowledge the fact that, this is a 10-year document, so whatever local laws come through today will be irrelevant next year, will be irrelevant the year after that. And that CASA actually have a rules framework that, whether or not it's perfect is not actually the issue, and even CASA will acknowledge that it's not. They do have the structure to allow for change to cope with the fact that this is a changing industry and a changing environment, and there are changing needs. So yeah, throwing it all back at CASA, and we will be having further conversations with them, with local laws, in as far how does Ballarat City Council now work with CASA and work within these laws to actually assist the community where the community does have concerns, which obviously we can do within the current framework. We have privacy laws, we have drone laws, we have aviation airspace laws in general. How does the council work within that? And so yeah, we'll be continuing to work with them and help them do that. So yeah, quite a backflip, which was really, really good and great for the councillors to stand up and pay so much interest. Like, they actually spent a lot of time. One of them actually acknowledged he got himself a Spark for Christmas and managed to crash it straight away, and then actually talked to some people and did a bit of research, found the rules, and has had a bit of fun flying his drone, and realizes that that's one aspect of the industry versus what we're doing. From a commercial point of view is very different, but it's still the same industry and we're still using the same airspace, and CASA does cover all of that. So yeah,
well done you. Well done you. And that's interesting. Let's park that operator came in and wanted to get rid of the 2 kilo bit for a second. We'll remember that. I'll try and remind me if I forget that, which I probably will. But Bruce, you've had a different, and you've moved away from the tent, I notice. You've had a different outlook there. You were in a positive and now in a negative situation.
Yeah, we had a review of our bylaws here just before Christmas, and there were over 20 submissions in favour of people flying drones in the park, which is a lot. It was more than any other topic. There were more submissions on this than any other topic in the bylaw review. So it was clear that the public wanted to be able to fly their drones and toys in the local parks. And to their credit, the councillors listened and they said, yes, yeah, good idea. Yeah, let's allow our people to fly their drones in the parks. And the mayor agreed, but there was a policy in place at the time that forbid it. And they said, well, we need to review the policy. But until this policy is reviewed, we will give an undertaking that no one shall be prosecuted under the existing policy, because it is our clearly stated intent that people are allowed to fly their toys and drones in the parks. It was great. So for 5 months, people have been flying, including me, flying their toys and drones in the parks. Fantastic. And last Wednesday, the mayor came out and said, nope, no more flying in the parks. The policy is back in effect. And I thought, hang on a minute. So I checked with the councillors who'd made this decision, and it was the first they'd heard of it. So the mayor has unilaterally decided to rescind this general permission. And Thumbhoo knows that all the people that gave submissions, Thumbhoo knows that her fellow councillors who had agreed. And so I did an Official Information Act request with our council to find out, have there been a wave of complaints? Has there been an incident I'm unaware of? And I got the information back yesterday. No complaints, no problems, no accidents, no incidents. So we've proven over 5 months that we can safely fly drones in the parks without irritating the public, without posing a public menace. And as I predicted, it would be a great benefit to the town. And the mayor has single-handedly reversed that. And she has decided that, no, people can't fly in the parks anymore. Oh, unbelievable. It's like, excuse me, what happened to the democratic process? And it's like, when you go into our council chambers, you can tell you there, because you can hear the theme from Deliverance playing. It's like that. Our council, that's the way it operates. So there's nothing I can do. So I can't fly in the parks anymore. No one else can fly in the parks anymore. And the crazy thing is that she has said she's got concerns over safety, right? So you can't fly your drone in the park, even though last year, as far as I'm aware, I saw no reported instances of anyone being injured by a recreational drone in New Zealand. But in the same period of time, 13,000 people were bitten by dogs. But you can walk your dog in the park without a permit or anything. Go for it. So, the problem is you cannot.
You
cannot get this through to the politicians, to her anyway. And then, of course, there was a discussion on the local Facebook page, and you get this, the media, people saying, these drones are creepy. If I saw a drone flying in a park, I'd shoot it down. All this crap that the media has bent people's minds out of shape. And we had another story here this week. A woman, apparently, was in the Daily Mail too, so it must be right, but a woman here in New Zealand went outside and saw a drone flying 1 metre above her backyard, and she was going to shoot it down with an air rifle. And I'm thinking, well, just go and hit it with a broomstick. It's 1 metre above your backyard.
Yes, you might have had a flying equipment lying around out the back there, mightn't she? You're suffering a little bit, aren't you, in New Zealand? Well, you're not suffering a little bit. You're suffering a lot at the hands of the media at the moment. And I see, I've forgotten his name now. I hear like Rob Vaughan, I hero light aircraft pilot. He sort of underlined it even more this week. So you are suffering, and do you think? I mean, straight away, I thought that must have been what your dear Lady Mayor considered, and that was her reasoning, was all the nonsense going on there.
Well, no, actually, there was another article published on Rod Vaughan where he still believes it was a drone that knocked his plane out of the sky, even though he himself admitted there have been 5 other spontaneous windscreen failures in those aircraft, but only 5. I mean, well, so it can't have been that. And then, interesting, more facts came to light. Apparently, pieces of the windscreen from that plane were found seen to fall from the sky and found 200 meters from the local fire station. So they found all the pieces of the windscreen, but not one piece of drone. And how strange is that? So I wrote to the person that wrote that article, and I raised all these issues, you know, the holes in her little story about no pieces of drone found, and the proven prior cases of the windscreen spontaneously failing. Every piece of the windscreen was found, but no piece of the drone. And she wrote back to me and accused me of cherry picking my facts. I mean, excuse me, but these are the facts. Your story was full of speculation and holes. And
but the directive is a fact. The manufacturer's directive about those windscreens, that's a fact.
Yeah, exactly. And people, when I posted my video, people came on there and commented. These are people who've actually had to replace those windscreens, and they commented how weak and floppy they are, and how and the fact that 5 of them have actually been documented as failing is kind of proof that it was likely to be a structural failure caused by poor maintenance or just bad materials.
I loved on the original article the fact that it talked about how it had broken this really thick 4mm windscreen, and it's like, if you've seen a windscreen of an airliner, a typical Foxbat or equivalent ultralight windscreen it may as well be cling wrap when it comes to the protection of anything flying through the front windscreen. It's rather pathetic, and like you say, no evidence of any piece of drone. There's no evidence. They found all these bits of plastic. There's no transfer of material. There's nothing. They've got no evidence whatsoever, other than a guy that's mucked up his landing after a windscreen failure. Now, I'm not picking on him for that. I'd hate to try and land an aircraft with that sort of wind in my face after having my head gashed with plastic. He did well not to have done worse, but why bring up drone? It's irrelevant. It's just
it's fashionable and gives credits and gives him
convenient.
Yeah,
and remember, he's in the media.
Lack of ownership.
He is a former investigative journalist, so he knows the value of hyping up a story to make it more saleable to media outlets around the world. And in fact, it went around the world. So he's just doing his job as a hypester, because we don't have reporters anymore, journalists. We have hypesters. They take. I find it amazing that we've had multiple instances now where airliners have reported seeing drones flying into our international airport. In each case, it is a pilot or the 2 pilots in that airplane. No third-party substantiation. And you notice the first time it happened, all the air traffic was disrupted because one pilot saw a drone passed so close that he was sure it had gone through the engine, yet strangely enough, he didn't know it hadn't until he got down and it was inspected. So I thought we were told that if a drone goes into an aircraft engine, it will crash and burn and everyone will die. But in this case, it passed right through, didn't cause any damage. But then, so nobody in the New Zealand media bothered to investigate that. Every statement at face value, no third-party verification. That's not journalism. That's publishing press releases. And then only the Associated Press had the good sense to go and actually investigate, and they found that despite the fact this was halting air traffic and everything, nobody called CAA and nobody called the police to try and track down the drone operator. So you then think something smells. Is it because they didn't want the police to find there wasn't a drone? I mean, it's like crazy. And then we had an incident the other day where a military helicopter had to be diverted in an airport closed down because somebody saw a drone from one of these military helicopters, and another incident at one of our airports. It's like, why has it all happened just now? Just a few weeks or a month or so after it was revealed that Kitty Hawk were testing their pilotless taxi in New Zealand. And all the
Well,
pilots
yeah.
went, oh, commercial pilots, oh, we're all going to lose our jobs.
Well, there's an element of that, and let's rewind to that 2 kilo, but that person, that commercial operator in Australia, having a go at Ballarat at the council, because that sort of speaks to what the Commercial Drone Alliance is busy trying to do in America, along with its major sponsors. If you haven't caught it, they want well, hang on, let's just read it. The Commercial Drone Alliance believe that hobbyist and model aircraft should be regulated by the FAA because times have changed and the sky belongs to them now, or that's how they want it to be. And the dear old SUS News has come out in support of the AMA officially. We wrote them a letter and everything. So we're going to help them as much as we can, and I hope other people do as well, because this is the thin edge end of the wedge. In fact, you sent me this link, started this story, Bruce, and it's something we've spoken about a lot here. That first 500 feet of air has suddenly got value. It never used to have value. It's got value now, and that's a worry.
The worrying thing is that this is backed by companies like Alphabet, the parent company of Google. So there's a lot of muscle going in to lobby for them basically to have the airspace that we've enjoyed for years. They're going to boot us out, and it's all about the dollar now.
It is. It's a worry. If you're in America, you need to get behind the AMA. I think that I'm sorry, AMA, but I think you're rabbits in the headlight again with this, and you've got to get it.
AMA has proven itself to be pretty toothless when it comes to lobbying, and they're a bunch of old men. And when the politicians say, "Oh, don't worry, trust us," they believe them. Really, seriously, where have they been for the last 60 years? We need a far more aggressive lobbying group that stands up for the entire rights of not only the model aircraft community, but the recreational drone community, because they're two separate entities. There's quite a difference. There's a big gap between the guy with his Phantom and the guy that flies quarter scale Spitfire at the local model park. But both parties are going to be affected. Both parties need to get together and form an international body, not just the US body or a European body, but an international body that represents the million plus people involved. And then you've got the weight of numbers, then you've got the lobbying power. But as long as we're a few hundred people here and a few thousand there, maybe a couple of 100,000 in the US, they just brush you off. You're not important. You're just a small group.
And I think that was actually one of the advantages we had in our lobbying to Ballarat is we formed a Ballarat RPAS group. And we had people that were doing FPV racing, they were doing model aircraft flying, commercial use, mapping, obviously people like me designing stuff. We had the full spectrum of industry other than people like Google. So what it meant is we weren't pushing one particular agenda, which was quite nice. I think that the sub-2 kilo thing that I found very interesting, which Bruce, you might actually be able to use. I assume the local laws in New Zealand are probably structured very, very similar to the local laws in Australia. In as far as councils cannot make a local law unless they actually have a reason for the local law that is based on a safety concern, community concern, etc., etc. And then they have to have evidence that they cannot achieve this outcome through existing laws that are federal, state, whatever. They can't achieve it through existing laws that they already have and reapplication of those. There's this list of things that they have to do, an investigation they have to follow before they can do that. And we straight out asked, what incident has caused the need for these laws in Ballarat? And the local laws officer turned around and said there was a complaint last year at a thing called White Night, which is a big, visual display around town, and where someone had flown a drone over the crowd, and one of the local officers was very concerned. There were 50 people saw it, and it was complained about. And our question was, did you notify CASA? Where is the report? And there is no CASA notification. They did not try to go down the existing laws path. They didn't do any of that sort of stuff. So what it turned out to really be is that a commercial operator had actually done this. It wasn't a sub 2 kilos person that had actually done this flight. And the flight they were actually complaining about from all we can understand, was actually over the top of a building, not over the top of people. And so the story just became very flexible. There wasn't a thorough investigation. So there really isn't a report that we could all go back and look at the evidence and blah, blah, blah. And that comes back to your mayor. If your mayor is acting undemocratically, then the argument, take drones out of the argument, discuss the process of the local law and discuss how, a fascist decision is being made. People love that in the media. And focus on the lack of democracy in that process, and take drones out of that argument, because really drones are irrelevant to it. If the local laws are not being done in a way that is inclusive of the community and actually following the processes that exist, then that's the story. And, getting the local paper involved. I mean, we've had the local paper involved here from the beginning. It's been really, really handy. So that would be my suggestion there, is take drones out of it and focus on the legislation and the misuse of power and, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Our local government acts the same. In fact, I quoted that in my submission, that they have to have a reason to make a bylaw. But unfortunately, unlike Australia, in New Zealand, the regulator, CAA, has put a default situation where you must get the permission of the owner of any land over which you fly, and the implied permission is that the implied situation is you don't have permission. You've got to get their permission. So all the council has to do is say, we don't give you permission, and then you're breaking the regulator's regulations. So they don't have to have a bylaw or anything. They just say, we're not going to give you permission, and then if you fly over there, the CAA comes along and pings you. So it's a much different situation than CASA, where you have a right to fly over property unless there's a bylaw that prevents you. Here, you have no right unless the council grants you that permission. They just refuse to grant permission. But as far as the democratic process goes, this is not the first. As I say, dueling banjos, it's the theme song of our council. If you get on the wrong side of them, you'll find yourself in your car in a swamp in the backwoods somewhere within an hour. It's like, it's bad stuff, and it's been going on for so long. It's been accepted. So I will be taking this further to a higher authority. But again, the timeframes involved are ridiculously long and things. It doesn't solve the actual problem, and I get really annoyed because I would rather work with our council than have to go into conflict with them. Yet, it's all personalities and things. They don't like me because I pointed out that their staff didn't know what the rules were and were misrepresenting the rules, and got a written confirmation from CAA that I was right and their staff was wrong. So suddenly I'm persona non grata because I've actually criticised them and I've been right. How dare you? But as the councillors themselves in this case were quite good. They agreed and everything happened. It's just the mayor has done an about face, and there's not much that the councillors seem to be pretty much powerless to do anything about this. They don't want to do anything. They want to steer the thing. It's like a small town. Everyone knows everyone. We just do what the mayor says. It's a frustration about it.
When's the next vote?
I wanted to say, hey, Bruce, this is for your mayor and the media that you have. This is the most fashionable accoutrement that most of it wear, because you're a conspiracy monger. You know that, don't you? Yeah. So,
and I've got an evil drone.
I was going to actually congratulate Gene on being the only person to have the correct piece of headwear for this segment, and that should be available to everybody when we start talking about these sort of things. So well done there, Gene. That's very good. But Gene, how do you feel about and how much are those hats, Gene? How do you feel the AMA's handling this? And I see in the comments people are saying, make manned aviation come up to these requirements, and I absolutely agree. You can't start if we're all aviation, we're all in it together now.
That was the drive in the very beginning, and I've got to sympathize so much with Bruce and you guys down there with CASA and the CAA that they're following the lead of the FAA in a lot of ways. Maybe sometimes a little before, sometimes a little after. This whole move to have Section 336 abolished here is, I think, going to stifle a lot of technology learning and exploration in the airspace, and I think it's wrong, quite honestly. We pretty much identified who the players are that are doing that, and it's unfortunate. AMA they've always been behind the curve. I think early on we warned them that, they need to be involved in this process. And they said, oh, no, not us. We're modelers. They'll never come after our stuff. We're not commercial, and it's not going to happen. And here they are. They got in on the ARCs, and they're trying to influence anything in any way they can, and they're behind the curve. I'm sorry. They should have been very strong and vocal up front. And now they are in a position of weakness, and they are going to lose big time, I'm afraid.
Yeah, no, I agree. We've offered our help in whatever we can at being ranty tin foil hat wearing types. We're professional at that. But yeah, because we've got, with Patrick and yourself and that, we've got some anecdotal evidence from sort of back to 2007 of how this all played out. And it's just an air grab. It's not a land grab. It's an air grab. Look, we've gone 20 minutes over the time. So I guess, well, actually, before I do that, Gene, you're talking at the show, which is our show, which is coming up, which I forget to. Are you off there soon? When is that? I can't remember.
Yes, I'll be jetting off to sunny San Francisco on the 23rd. And, of course, we'll be trying to support Patrick and all his antics at the SUASB Expo. Looking forward to that. It's always a good one. Looking forward to seeing all the folks out there, and Patrick as well. And then from there, I jet off to Tulsa, Oklahoma to another show there. And then from there, go to Denver at AUVSI. He's the regular jet setter. You know me, the road warrior.
That's when you'll go and pick up your award. I'm looking forward to seeing it. So best of luck for that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Philip, before we end it, that's not very good, is it? Philip, how are Cube autopilot sales, I should say? And I don't know, am I allowed to? You did mention it on air last time. How's the movement to get them actually made in America going? Is that kicked off yet?
Yeah, look, that will take a little while to get that happening, but yeah, we'll definitely be doing a USA built version of the Cube to keep everyone over there happy. Yeah, so that will be happening soon. With professional manufacturing, nothing is fast, unfortunately. I wish it was faster than it is, but yeah.
Okay.
Well, if I'm very interested, I have 15 Spectras that can use the Cube.
Very cool.
There's 15 straight away. Nicola, what's on your build table? What's coming up in the future for what might we be seeing on your most excellent channel?
Well, there's going to be a test. Actually, that test happened almost on Monday. So that's 1 day ago, 2 days ago, of the FSky and R9M and the R9 receiver. I've seen a lot of people struggle with that. I literally have no idea why. I got it, flashed it, put it on the clouds, did 25 kilometers out and back. It's working perfectly. So that's coming up. My next test of the strakes on the Nano Talon as well. I'm planning to actually redo the My Fly Dream Nimbus because that plane actually got flown once and hasn't flown since, even though it has generated a huge amount of interest, mainly because ever since that first flight, I haven't been able to throw it in the air when I'm on my own, because by the time I reach for the radio, it sort of crashes into the ground. I have no idea what's going on with that thing. I'm going to be replacing the autopilot because obviously something's not working. And the range at 2000, yeah, it already actually has a Pix Hawk in it, but I think something's wrong either with the version or the... Oh, trust me, I have more autopilots than I can use right now. So adding more to the mix only aggravates me. Anyway, the Believer, that's something I've ignored for a while, and I'm gonna fly it a bit more because right now it has the iNav in it, and iNav tried to kill the Nano Talon today, and I think I'm just gonna switch both of those back to Pix Hawk flight controllers, and you know, at least at least I know those, I know how they work. and I'm waiting for some more stuff that I'm not sure how many of you know it. That's very far from serious mapping, but it is a competitor to the Hubsan H301S plane. For those who know of it, it's basically ready to fly plane with FPV and autopilot and goggles for less than $300. And the Hubsan was a huge deal when it came out, especially the 301S. And it hasn't been the most reliable plane out there, but there's like this hunger, you know, of the people for something like this that they can just take out of the box and fly it and know that it will come back every time when it loses radio link, because that wasn't the case with the Hubsan. That thing was all over the place. It worked perfectly for me. It worked perfectly for a lot of people, but a lot of guys lost theirs or had to go look for it 10 kilometers away because it just decided to go back to China or someplace. Yeah, I think I'm going to be concentrating on planes a lot more this year and for the foreseeable future, because copters, racing copters, I think people in general are getting tired of those. And I see a lot of people moving from racing copters to, they're jumping straight into the deep waters. They contact me and they go, okay, I've been doing some racing, but I came across your video of this and this plane, and what can I buy that will get me 20 kilometers away? And
yeah. And also there's some push from the biggest one of the biggest retailers out there, which is Hobby King, about those very fast and small wings for doing FPV.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that people, when Hobby King starts putting their marketing dollars on that thing really turns some heads to the people, and it's cheap.
Yeah.
Although
well,
the guys
actually not the small fast wings. I'm talking about guys that have only done racing, and that's how they got into the hobby. They want to buy a Clouds, they want to buy a Believer, they want to buy a Skywalker, and they want to put gear on it to enable them to fly at 20 kilometers away and basically do what I do. And that's people from all over the world, including in my country. A lot of the guys that were like hardcore racers right now, they're bored because it's all of the same. The motors are improving, but it's not like it was for the past 2 or 3 years. Flight controllers, not a lot of improvement there except for firmware. So basically now all of them are firmware testers, and that means updating firmware twice a day and going out to test it. And trust me.
Oh, come on, Nicola. Don't say that of Autopilot. We don't do twice a day. We do about 30 new builds on Master, but the stable releases.
Hold on. Autopilot is not used on racing copters as far as I know. The people
not that you know of.
Maybe someone is, but for the most part, that's Beta Flight, Butterflight, whatever flight. It's now the most popular thing.
Yeah,
and people are getting tired of it, and people don't want to get out of the hobby, and that's a good thing, because the mass of people in this hobby is increasing, and partly because of racing copters, partly why this hobby developed so quickly over the past 3 to 4 years is because of copters, and we can't ignore that. But now they're starting to move off to other stuff in this hobby, and planes, helicopters, whatever they fancy, and that's a big thing. The problem is they're jumping high. I mean, going from a racer that can go 200 meters away to a plane that can go 20 kilometers away, it has taken me, 5 years to get to 25 kilometers. Probably it can take less, but I refuse to use 1.2 gigahertz for video. And the radar tower that I've got on top of the mountain, that's 5 kilometers away from me, coincidentally operates on that band, so it makes that frequency pretty useless around here. But 5.8 has potential, and a lot of people don't realize that, but it's the best developed video technology we have.
Well, it's the best. It's best developed for CCTV cameras and other stuff. But anyway,
I think
it's the best non-protected. It's not going to be the best when vehicle to vehicle comes out, because they've got all over 5.8 is being used for vehicle to vehicle, and that's
but some of the new HD systems on 5G are proving to be very good in terms of range and performance, and I think we're going to see more of that. And the SD FPV system, digital FPV system I'm working on, looks as if it'll give quite a significant increase in range over an analog system as well.
If only there was sort of an ArxangelRC video device, that would be fantastic. If there was only a box that one could plug in, and that could happen. If only.
Isn't that what the M-lid is? Is that not what the M-lid is?
Yeah, the M-lid, the new one already is, but you can do it with the Raspberry Pi or a Tegra, an NVIDIA Tegra. Just plug the camera and you get AP sync. It runs.
So
it does run, and that's very equivalent to something like SoloLink or something like that. You know, it's good for 1 or 2 kilometers. That's great. So for people that are actually flying, let's say legally, things like the Raspberry Pi options and stuff like that are fine. If you're wanting a more robust link, because there might be some bushes in the way of your line of sight or something like that, because of course you're still flying legally. There are some more options on the market, and yes, we will be releasing something that craps all over most very, very soon.
Oh, another scoop. Hey, anyway, moving on swiftly.
So hey, Gary, take the chance, squeeze him, make him spill the beans.
No. I've already said, got him to say too much. I know that, and he's going to be swearing. In fact, I can see if you look, his fingers typing. He's swearing at me.
Look, he's sweating. He's sweating.
Remember, binary 132.
I didn't hear that.
Is this thing being recorded, Gary?
No.
No,
And Nathan, let's go down the road. It's taking 20 minutes to finish. Nathan, what can we expect next for yourself? I've enjoyed tonight. It's been great.
I'd like to formalize a report first off, with kind of my results and a little bit more, rather than having to dig through 15 or more pages in RC Group's thread of what exactly I did. So I'd like to formalize a report, and then beyond that, I'd like to really start exploring and attacking VTOL, and I'd like to have the longest electric VTOL out there. I don't know. I don't know what the record is right now.
Another hybrid system.
About the new one from you, I can tell you've already beat 25 hours, because the new one from Alti is 25 hours. So,
okay, but that's a hybrid system, right? I'm talking all electric.
Okay,
all electric.
Right. Yeah, I don't know one of those. You can get one of those that is tethered to the grounds, unlimited.
Yeah, I'm not sure a VTOL tethered to the ground quite makes logical sense.
That's a kite, isn't it? Is that a kite?
No.
It's a balloon, Gary.
Oh, it's a balloon. Oh, yes. And Louis, have you going to finish that? I know I'd love to. We'd love to have that report in SES News, Nathan. When you write it up, we'd definitely love to have that.
Sounds good. Thanks. Keep following the project.
Of course. I will link below, as they say on the Tube of the U's. Louis, your helicopter. When are you going to finish it? Come on, hurry up.
We're just waiting for.
Is that the bits? Is that the bits already? Have you already crashed it? Is that what it really is?
No. It's just here waiting for parts. I'm waiting for electronics. Still don't know what flight controller I'm going to use. But the room is very short, although is this big. But that's my next project. That and work-related stuff, unfortunately. But someone has to work.
Yeah, well, then that's you. We've nominated you. And then Bruce, what's on your build table, work table? Lots of coffee, sadly, I hear, and that's not such a positive thing.
Yeah, lots of coffee. And this the bits to derive for the SD digital video system. So I'm going to be putting a lot of effort into that because obviously my flying options are a little bit more limited than usual. So I'll be putting a lot of effort into that and try and get something that I can show people and demonstrate within probably another 4 to 5 weeks, hopefully. And if it works as well as I hope it works, I'm hoping some manufacturer will pick up and make it. It'll be released under open source, and so that we know, anyone can copy the design, build it for themselves or whatever. So hopefully it will extend the life of our 5.8 gigahertz FPV systems.
Just a little bit, guys. Thank you very, very much. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. It's been a great one today. So thank you very, very much for taking the time. Whole hour and 34 minutes. Except for some people that were late, of course. Anyway, but I've made a note. I've made a note in the register. And funnily enough, it says Philip. It actually is Philip's Cleaning Services. But I've made a note. Anyway, I've made a note there in the register. Subscribers, thank you very much, dear viewer, wherever you are in the world. Please join us again, 2100 GMT next Tuesday. Look forward to seeing you then. Everybody have a safe week, and we'll see you then. Cheers all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.